And welcome back to 110 Daily. Chris, it's that time of the week. We unveil our top 10s in the NFL, which will be particularly interesting after what we saw last night. Where are we starting? I'll give you the honors. Who is 10 in your hierarchy this week?
Yeah, this was a tough one this week because of a number of factors. One was, of course, where the Steelers land, because I think, well, we didn't do this last week because of technical problems. 2 weeks ago, were coming off of the Washington loss. But I don't think anybody, I mean, I think I was still, going to have them in my top four or something like that, or top five. And now all of a sudden, it's a very different story. So that was a tough call. I also ended up with because I just sort of list every team that I think belongs is it the top 10, team that I'm interested in. And so I have my 11, 12, and 13 teams too, which we're not going to get into, but I have them here because I'm trying to decide. It was hard because for me, just sort of an overall comment, there were four teams I was very confident at the top. And then honestly, 5 through 12, I could see an argument for having, I could see an argument for the teams in basically any order. Obviously, I have a reason for why I'm doing what I've ranked in the way I have, but it was trickier than I thought this week because there's just a bunch of in the middle teams that I'm not sure I could like look positively on and feel like they should be sixth, or look negatively on and feel like they should be outside of the top 10. My 10th team, though, to answer your question, is the Bucks. Um, they dug themselves a big hole against Atlanta, but it was scary how easily it was for Brady and that offense to climb out of it. Of course, they were helped by strong second half defense, but they scored 31 points in the second half of that game. Um, you saw Antonio Brown with the catch for the game winning. I believe it was the game winning touchdown, right? Or the at least it was a crucial touchdown for them late in that game. And like there are still clear holes with this team. I'm not saying that. I mean, obviously I have them 10th, so I'm not, telling you I have them fourth or anything. There are clear holes with that team, but I think there's an opportunity here still for this team if things click right for them to get, capitalize on the situation that they're in and show up, even if they don't finish the season outstanding. As long as there aren't any red flags, there's always a chance, red flags in the coming weeks. I think there's a chance they show up um, ready to go and firing on all cylinders potentially for the playoffs. So I have the Bucks at 10. How about you?
I still kept them right out. They were probably 12 for me.
Sure.
I've got the Ravens at 10. You're picking
Okay.
between these 9 and 5 teams. I'm a huge fan of the Ravens. Josh and I talked about this yesterday. They've scored 34, 47, and 40 points in their last three games. They've held teams to 17 or fewer points in five of their last seven games.
hmm
The other team I had right there was the Dolphins. I've been
Yeah.
consistently having the Dolphins in my top 10, but the Ravens are simply more dynamic. And I just continue to believe the record is not an accurate depiction of where they are. That if they didn't have that tough 8 game stretch with all the COVID stuff, missing Lamar Jackson for one of the Steelers games, this would be much closer to a 10-4, 11-3 team than a 9-5 team. And they've got two very, very winnable games at the end. I just think that they are. If I was tempted to put them even higher because I like them better than the Steelers, I just couldn't do it this week. So I've got them at 10 and I've got the Steelers at 9.
Okay, yeah, and I have the Ravens as my first team out. They're my 11. Dolphins are my 12. So we're in the same neighborhood, and yeah, I'm with you on the Ravens. I was seriously considering that there was one of those teams that part of me felt like I should put them as high as eighth or something like that. Um, right, they obviously beating the Jaguars, no surprise, but they absolutely destroyed them. They're finding their rhythm at the right time. They're getting healthier defensively, and I think that could be, to your point, I think that could be the hot team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs. I really think that that's a real possibility that they could be that team that's just firing on all cylinders at the right time that nobody wants to face. Um, so you have the Steelers 9. I have the Steelers one spot higher. So we're both in the same neighborhood. I have them at eighth. I have the Titans at 9. Um, they obviously had an incredible offensive performance against the Lions, of course, against the Lions, being the key phrase there. Derrick Henry was his usual self, though. Ryan Tannehill, that passing game continues to be impressive. They've got a really big test coming up this weekend in playing the Packers. So that's going to be a game to watch coming up in week 16. Um, but I think that they're really starting to click. I think there's some defensive gains being made there. Again, they're not a perfect team. There are clear holes. There are clear deficiencies. There's not a situation where I see them being the incredibly well rounded. But I like what I've been seeing there from that offense. I mean, it just seems like between Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, they're really just firing on all cylinders there. So I have them at 9. Um, and so then, Josh, you have the Steelers at 9, right?
Yes, I've got the Titans at 8
Oh,
for
there you go.
for
Yeah.
the same reasons you just said. They've got back to back 21-point wins. Yes, Jags, Lions, not good football teams. I get it, but the Rams just lost to the Jets. At least the Titans are comfortably winning these games the way that they should. So I feel the same way about them. We didn't learn anything really because I
Hmm.
expected they're consistent. I expect them to take care of business. I don't have the same consistency concerns I have with them that I do with the Steelers or the Rams or some of these other teams.
Hmm.
My question is the ceiling, and I still continue to believe that the Colts are the more dangerous team in the playoffs. So I have the Colts at 7, right ahead of them.
So do I. Yeah.
They're they're right there, but we're the same mindset then. They're
Hmm.
five. The Colts are 5-1 in their last 6 games, with those 5 wins coming over the Titans, Green Bay, the Raiders, and twice over Houston. I understand Houston's not having a good season, but that's still Deshaun Watson.
Hmm.
It's a quality set of wins and a good stretch that they're having right now. Then we'll see what they can do with the Steelers here, but that's you're picking very very thin margins between these two teams. But I give the Colts the slight edge as I have all season. So I've got those two teams 7 and 8.
Yeah, I know. I have the Steelers 8th. Um, so, we've talked about them, all the concerns I have with them. There's a part of me that did consider completely dropping them out
Oh
of the
yeah,
top
I
10.
wanted to.
I wanted to, but it was just one of those things where I didn't feel as right, especially considering, I didn't feel right, and also
Yeah,
the fact that yes, they could flip the switch and get back to where they were.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
expecting it,
I'm one
but
week away.
right.
We'll see what happens
Oh,
against the
sure.
Colts.
Yeah, if they don't show up against the Colts, or we don't see much more from them against the Colts, I'm ready to drop them out of the top 10, for sure. The Colts, like you said, look, they're not the most flashy team in the AFC by any means. They're so often overlooked because of it, but they're winning with good balance and the fact that they can win in multiple ways, despite not having one elite strength. Right? You don't look at them and say, "Wow, they're just super elite in this one area per se." Right? They can win on the arm of Philip Rivers, which is a weird sentence to. It's a little bit of a weird sentence to say. They can win on their running game. They can win on their playmaking defense, which hasn't been maybe as lights out as you might, hope for the Colts. So just on their given their approach and their philosophy, but their balance that they have, that consistent coaching, I think makes them a real threat in any game. They can give just about any team a hard time at the very least, and at the very least, I should say, and they can win in different ways. They grind it out, right? You're not looking at them and saying, "Well, what an incredible lights out performance that makes this huge statement." It's like, no, they grinded it out and they get a 4 point win, or they win on it almost fell apart to the Texans, right? It wasn't an incredible game against the Texans, but they keep racking up wins. And they got the late game, the red zone fumble late in that game to seal the victory. And so, right, they haven't been winning by big margins against teams that they probably should be winning by bigger margins against. But at the end of the day, they keep finding a way to get it done. So I'm with you on having the Colts above the Titans. I have them at 7th as well. Um, my sixth place team is the Browns.
Same. You
Wow,
have come
we're just
around. You have come around to the Browns. I'm proud of you, Chris.
I'll thank you. I have come around to the Browns, and part of it is I've come around on the Browns. Part of it is it's a sort of a lack of optimism about other teams behind them, where it's not like I can see it's like I was more optimistic on the Rams a few weeks ago, and now I'm just not. I'm not feeling it, and I don't feel like we can put the Colts up there, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not confident. The Steelers obviously drop out, so that pushes everybody up.
Yep.
The Titans have ceiling. Bucks, Dolphins, right? Nobody else belongs up there, so it's partly process of elimination.
Yep.
But it's partly I'm on the train a little bit. The team obviously picked up an important win over the Giants on Sunday, remain one game and get above the Ravens. Baker Mayfield's been we're looking at the old accurate version of him. It's back. It's really
Mm-hmm.
dangerous. The defense is stepping up for big plays. They're running the ball well. I'm still watching the team's defense over the final few weeks of the season as they look to lock up a playoff spot. I'm not all of a sudden thinking it's in completely different shape, but they've stepped up for some big plays defensively. And yeah, it's really that. It's the sharp version of Baker Mayfield really impressing. I mean, really impressing. He looks like his old self again. And so I have the Browns at number 6 as well.
Yeah, I've been really impressed these past couple of weeks. They're behaving like a team that belongs in the playoffs and that knows how to get the job done.
Yeah.
And that's a real question with the obviously their history and some of the maturity concerns you have, be it Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., who obviously isn't playing a factor right now, but it was a concern that you can't just put talent on the field and it work. But they are making it work. Even though they didn't win that Ravens game, and unfortunately we didn't get to talk about it, they still
Mm-hmm.
answered the bell 3 or 4 different times after the Ravens hit them in the mouth, and the game was hanging in the balance, and they got the points that they needed to stay in that game. Lamar Jackson had the ball last, he made one more play. It happens.
Yeah.
But you followed that up and that disappointment up with a convincing, comfortable win over the Giants, who are still trying to win their division somehow. I I am all in on this team. I mean, that's not to say I think they're winning the Super Bowl, but I am sold on
Right.
what Kevin Stefanski is building, what they are doing, what Baker Mayfield is doing, the way he's performing right now. I'm all in on the Browns. I've got the Seahawks at 5.
Likewise.
All right, we'll see if we've got the same all the way up the board. They haven't
Mm-hmm.
given up more than 17 points in their last 4 games. The defense is much better. Yeah, the offense has
Mm-hmm.
been hit or miss. Wasn't great in this game. They built the lead, then almost threw it away. It's not as much because they beat Washington by 5 as it is I trust Russell Wilson and the way that they've been playing over this recent stretch.
Yeah, they barely squeaked by Washington, despite the fact that Russell Wilson wasn't really all that impressive. It was
Yeah.
really, he has been really pedestrian looking, frankly, over the last several weeks now. Part of the reason that I have them, it wasn't a super comfortable 5. It wasn't the kind of thing where I put them at 5 and was like, yes, I'm really comfortable with this, because there is that concern. The offense is not what it was at the beginning of the season, obviously. Encouraged by, you mentioned the defensive stats, what they've done recently, and that helps this team be more complete. We know what the offense is capable of. We know what Russell Wilson is capable of. They can absolutely get things going, whether down the stretch or come playoff time. They've got the Rams coming up in Week 16. I'm interested in that. After that game, I feel like I'm going to be a little bit more confident in where I have them in these rankings.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more confident in what we're seeing from them. Of course, maybe the Rams really struggle and I'm not able to take away much on the Seahawks. But I'm anticipating after this upcoming weekend, being able to be a little bit more confident in my assessment of the Seahawks and where they
Yeah.
really are heading down the stretch.
Yeah. They haven't been great. It's just kind of Russell Wilson's been fine. The defense has been
Right.
good. They just keep
Yeah.
winning games they're supposed to. Yeah, it's hard to evaluate them. I've got the Saints at 4. Are you in agreement there?
Likewise. Yeah.
I still love this defense. And Drew Brees was 15 to 34 for 234 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. He wasn't great, so there's obviously room for improvement as he continues to get healthier and just back into the swing of things. I just couldn't put him above these last 3 teams.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's was clearly not 100%, but that was to be expected. And especially now that I'm looking at him and thinking back on his performance after what we saw from Roethlisberger last night, I feel like it kind of, I don't know, doesn't paint it in a new light, but it sort of does make me, it's like, okay, well, let's give Breeze a little bit of credit here. I mean, like, let's
Mm-hmm.
not panic too much. And like you said, I was actually encouraged in some sense by the Saints in this game. I mean, right, the defense is picking up the slack where the offense hasn't been tremendous. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes made plenty of plays in that game over the weekend, but that's inevitable. The goal was to contain him. The Saints defense did that to the tune of a season low 5.4 yards per attempt for Mahomes. So really, that defense is legit. They kept the Chiefs in a very close game despite Breeze not being at quite 100%. And I'm still in believing that this is a team that is a Super Bowl threat, especially if they get Michael Thomas back to give that offense a boost.
Yeah, they're kind of shutting him down in the hopes that he will be 100% or close to it for the postseason. So there's that part of it too. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Do you have the Bills at 3 like I do?
I do have the Bills at 3. I think now we know we have it all the way up, so we have them in the same order. Yeah, the Bills. talk about firing on all cylinders at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen in complete control of his environment against the Broncos. That is what has impressed me so much. The poise under pressure. He has looked fantastic. That offense is firing on all cylinders. They can beat any team in the AFC right now. They're capable. I'm not saying they beat any team at any night, anywhere, but they're capable of beating just about any team in the AFC. They're clearly much better than the team that lost consecutive games to the Chiefs and Titans earlier this season. I've also seen continued defensive improvements from this team. They've won 7 of their last 8.
Four in a
I'm
row.
not sure 4 in a row. I'm not sure any team can stop them. I'm really buying in on the Bills.
Yeah, and you talk about these losses. They lost the Cardinals by 2, the Chiefs by 9, then the Titans destroyed them by 26. But and you mentioned those back-to-back games. So these are all good losses, quality losses, whatever you want to call it. And 2 of them were competitive. There's really only one game where they didn't factor into the equation and really show up. And Josh Allen's been great. You still have there's always going to be those shaky moments, but he's gotten significantly
Sure.
better. We got to give him credit. He's been phenomenal recently. I'm all in on him too. I really like where they're going. I just put the Packers ahead of him because I still trust Aaron Rodgers more than Josh Allen at this moment in time.
Right.
That's that's what this is for me. Is that the Packers have been there, not necessarily this rendition, but the Aaron Rodgers Packers.
Right. That's my reason too. Obviously, it wasn't a very exciting performance, not a very flashy performance from the
Yeah.
Packers against Carolina. They got the job done nonetheless, and I'm willing to give them a. It's not even like I have to give them a huge pass
Mm-hmm.
because they won the game, but
Right.
I'm intrigued by their matchup against the Titans this weekend, and I'm with you in sort of the reasoning. I'm just not willing to make that swap of putting the Bills above the Packers, given what we've seen from the Packers, my general optimism about that team, Aaron Rodgers and his experience, and I'm not willing to put, Josh Allen ahead of him, just like you said. So we both have the Chiefs
Yep.
number one. Not a lot to say here. I'll just say this. They faced another really tough test in the Saints defense. They were forced to adjust offensively, and they weren't able to get a great pace offensively. But look, they still were able to produce 32 points. They had those quicker scoring bursts. This is the bad version of Patrick Mahomes. It's a 254 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
They're not putting away teams like in the past. It's 6 consecutive games now they've won by a single possession, but they're the best team in the NFL. I'm not picking against them in any matchup anywhere until they give me extensive reason to.
Yeah, and I talked about this a decent amount with Josh yesterday. They controlled that game from a statistical perspective way more than the final score indicates.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to still understand how that was only a 3 point game. The Saints defense did just enough and Drew Brees did just enough to make it interesting, but I'm not worried about it at all. They were the better team. They're just the best team in the NFL. Not too
Yeah.
much to add to you.
Right.
So
So
there you have it. Our NFL top tens that we do every week. When we come back, it is time to humor ourselves and hopefully humor you as well with humor me. Please, you are watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.